Mike mentioned, my name is Joe Grigsby. I'm the managing director of our Chicago office. Before we get started, I'll let the other panelists introduce themselves.
I'm Sherrie Hicks from Clinician's Oral Care.
Eric Wood from Sears Home Services.
And Tom from Google.
So Mike mentioned, we talked about being a growth partner, and obviously the implication starts with being a growth partner for our clients. But we know that that partnership, as Mike mentioned, extends to our clients' partners, our partners, right? And that could be publishers, it can be platforms, it can be technology, it can be, quite frankly, other agencies. We can't grow in a silo, and I think for so many of us, that's actually one of the biggest challenges that we're trying to overcome, is the silo of our organizations, the silo of our process, the silos of our partnerships. And so as we lean into a growth partnership, it's not a surprise that Google is a key place that we lean into, right? They are our longest legacy, longest standing client. They're our largest partner. They're our largest partner. And one of the things that we've really seen in the last 6-9 months from a Chicago perspective is, how do we do more to take advantage of that partnership? How do we bring more value of that partnership to the agency, and how do we translate that for our clients? And for us, what that starts to look like is not to think about Google as a partner on the transactional side, right? There's clearly the concept of buying, but how do we bring them upstream in our process with our existing clients like a Sears Home Services, with new clients like Smilelicious? And so what we want to talk to today is, what does it mean to be a growth partner with Google, and what does that deliver in value back to our clients? So with that, I'm going to start with Tong, and we've had a lot of great conversations, and a big part of it has been this commitment that we've seen, quite frankly, from Google. And not that they haven't always been a great partner, but there seems to be a sea change, right? There seems to be this recognition, quite frankly, a bit more leaning into a longer game, right? Not just about the immediate opportunity to sell this inventory or this ad unit, but a real commitment to work as a business partner on behalf of our clients. And so can you speak a little bit about what's been going on at Google, and then how that's benefiting our partnership?
Sure. First of all, it's always comforting to hear that as a legacy partner, how we can plan thinking about growth. We're thinking about growth all the time as a business, but also as a platform. So kind of bring a little bit of context in place for us. I understand most of the folks here are from iCrossing. A lot of you are an existing clients of iCrossing. Many of you work with Google. There are a couple of things that has been changing, right? So one is our advertisers are faced with many ad solutions today. You have many selections for partnership, whether it's the agency, whether it's creatives. You also have a lot of opportunities to work with the different media platforms and also different ad tech companies. So we understand that in an ever-changing environment with all this technology and kind of adoption, we need to think a little bit about the longer term, more specifically about what we call the customer business objectives, right? What are the objectives do you want to kind of achieve and accomplish? And next thing we look at how do we deliver those expectations to you? And this is where we start looking at our existing networks of our agencies. And what we realized that is going forward, starting 2019 and 2020, I think what you can see is the traditional definition of PPC or SEM in the definition of channel execution, there's less and less value in that. There's a lot of redundancy. The efficiency is super high nowadays. There's not as much of a value add. So what we want to think about in our future definition of agency partnership is thinking about the longer game, right? We hear a lot today on other panels talking about lifetime value of a customer, your acquisition paths, how do you think about sustainability? We start introducing sustainability into our own internal measurement of advertiser success as well as agency success. And in order for us to deliver that, right, we need to make a conscious decision between, do we spread very wide about partner with everyone there is, or do we make a very cautious decision of thinking about finding the right partner, building the right relationship, and then we lean in a little more and going through a joint business development, joint business planning cycle. And this is where when Joe's team came in from iCrossing's Chicago office, where we're able to have a little bit of breakthrough and thinking a little bit about what is your business objective, how do you want to grow your agencies, and what does that mean to the unique market and customers you're servicing. And so we're hoping to build more and more tangents around the area where we can build and we can grow together through this formalized joint business plans. what does that mean to an advertiser, right? I think it means a couple of things. One is you can see, hopefully you will be able to see more and more of a coherent approach between Google, which is a technology and media provider, and our agency, which is a service provider, and how do we actually have a more coherent approach to you? So you don't get this kind of very weird of, pull and push feeling between, what you probably address as a vendor versus a service agency. So that's number one. Number two is I'm hoping that we can actually deliver more value ultimately to you. All right, we're pushing very hard on helping our agencies and eventually with our advertisers and understanding your business objective. How does that tie to marketing objective? Then eventually, how do you tie to all the way down to campaign and expectations? So we're only going to be able to do that at scale through our select partners. Right? The scale is a big piece, and you hear Google always talk about scale. The truth of the fact is that we cannot service every advertiser with the way that you deserve at every single touch point, right? So there's incredible value we recognize from our agencies, and we continue to kind of bet these strategically with our select partners. So today we're very happy to kind of see advertisers from two different aspects, right? An existing large household brand and also an entrepreneur and a new advertiser. We're actually focused on both and hoping that we can improve sustainability both from a new advertiser perspective as well as an existing large advertisers angle.
So I appreciate it, and I'll kind of build on it, and then Eric, I'm going to come to you because I think as we had this conversation, we are looking for how do we elevate each other, and quite frankly, I think Google did come with kind of this expectation, right? Is if we're going to get more value, we've got to find a way to move upstream in a more consistent kind of way to have a higher conversation, not just about the tactics, but about the business. And so one of the things that we identified was for our existing clients, we do quarterly business reviews. And really looking at, not that we're not talking every day, every week, every month, but really committing to, on a quarterly basis, that when we're talking with our clients about their business objectives, that we're engaging our partners, Google specifically, upstream in that process and bringing that forward. Eric, can you talk a little bit about how you see the benefit as an existing client of the partnership and what it means for your business and how you see that continuing to evolve?
Yeah, I think, as you said, we have the quarterly business reviews, and bringing all of our vendors, all of our partners together gives a different perspective. Google obviously has a product, iCrossing as a service. Well, they have different perspectives. Google with Google Analytics, it's our analytic tool, they can bring in extra data. From an SEM perspective, they can bring in other data from an impression level, not only for our business unit, but also for the wider Sears. And what are not specific customers, but where are we in the landscape of a marketplace? So there's a lot of extra data that they can bring in to whatever conversation we're having there.
And then obviously it's beneficial if we can use that as part of our planning process rather than just the buying process. Again, Tong, one of the things you talked about is, as we look to grow as a business, we know we have to evolve. I mean, that's part of this perspective positioning is we have to change our perspective. And one of the things that we found in Chicago we were challenged with is the traditional agency model isn't working for startups, right? Because startups don't have the large commitments. It's not like you're moving from one agency to another. You're starting from zero and building up. And so one of the things that we were fortunate enough to do with Google is start this joint venture around a growth factory, which is focused on providing a level of service for startups that we're now piloting with you. Can you speak a little bit about kind of what you're doing and where you see value in this offering as an entrepreneur?
Well, Smilelicious is a really unique beauty product in the oral care space. And it is basically a category disruptor, an innovative product that has not been released yet. It's based on Smile Flavorgenics, which is a technology of you weren't supposed to see that, Joe, yet.
They don't see it.
They don't see it yet, but I'm ready to release it. So Flavorgenics is a concept in teeth whitening that has not been out there. It's based on the consumer basically customizing their flavor experience as well as their whitening experience. So when you go to Starbucks and you have 170,000 different ways to order your coffee, it's really based on the customizing the experience and the flavor. So Flavorgenics is a professional proprietary formulation that has taken 2 years for me to get to the point where we're ready to release in June. And the way we're going to release it is quite different than the traditional marketing that has been out there for a product like this. We went to the San Jose group, George San Jose, and he has helped with building the brand. And then he made the introduction to eye crossing, which, Joe, I'm totally excited about. This is something that is an opportunity I didn't think would be out there, to be with Google and have that as a vehicle to build the brand. We're not going to be going to the bricks and mortar. We're first going to roll it out as in a digital fashion. So I'd like to show, Carla, can we show our before and afters? Okay, so here we are. We were in the middle of a meeting with Eye Crossing not too long ago, and I took a risk, and I said to everyone who was sitting in the meeting, I'm going to give you a toothbrush, and I'm going to give you the toothpaste. After you eat lunch, I'd like you to go to the bathroom and do what the ADA standard is brush your teeth for 2 minutes. And lo and behold, we have a before and after. That is after 2 minutes. So you can imagine what you could achieve in 30 days, right? Using it like ordinary toothpaste. That's just the toothpaste. It's a whitening product as well and a mouth rinse. So this is a unique product that's going to be released in the digital space, and we're going to partner with Eye Crossing, and we're thrilled with having Google the opportunity, because normally a startup, we don't have the finances to play with the big boys, but we now have an opportunity that will make the difference in our brand.
Yeah, we're excited because I think it's, quite frankly, this disruption that's happening. You know, if you're a startup, you have to build a model into the space. But if you're an existing company like Sears Home Services, you're also being disrupted, right? And I think what this gives us, the partnership with Google and the work that we're doing, starts to give us the right to try new things, try new models. The key is doing so in a way that is scalable, right? And so, again, for our existing clients, really committing to the quarterly business review meetings as the place to bring the partnership forward. And back to Tong, I do think it starts with understanding what is the business value, what's the business goal, because that is how we play to the long term, right? And then the nice thing about a startup is we get to build that with you, right? We get to craft what success looks like. We get to start to pilot things and see what gets there. But I do think that it starts to build a business model that not only is valuable for you, but then becomes more valuable for our existing clients as they look to be more nimble, as they look to the agencies to be more nimble, and they look for us to bring our partners like Google forward in that way. Tom, can you speak a little bit more about how this represents an opportunity to work with you guys, not just on the investment, to really bring insights to our clients so they can better understand their business and the opportunity to build around that?
Yeah. So the interesting things we've seen is a couple fronts, right? Is you have two examples here, right? One, an inspiring new brand that's about to launch, and then you have a very large conglomerate and that's actually trying to reinvent themselves. And then the challenges is similar, right, in two ends of the spectrum, where our largest brands in the world usually work with multiple agencies, right? They work different ways of whether you call it creatives and executing and branding, and then you go to geo and verticals. And then, so they have the choice between, okay, do I consolidate? Do I kind of invest and diversify my media spending? And then you have a smaller advertiser that's more agile and start thinking about, well, before I think about agency or direct, I really need to think about what's my brand image, where do I launch, what's my channel, how do I distribute it, who are my customers? So these unique challenges are very important to us, but we're limited in our ways of thinking, how do we address both Sherrie and Eric at the same time, right? And simple answer is we can't. We cannot do that in an efficient and effective manner. Certainly not the amount of attention both customers deserve. So the first thing we come in mind is, okay, how do we find an agencies that are incredibly agile, and agencies that are actually willing to flex their own model? I think, Joe, you're hinting on that. Is oftentimes we hear and we see a lot of traditional agencies in a way where, well, we have a very fixed model, and this is how we go to market. And it's important that businesses have a consistency across their operation. The challenge here is then, as Google, as we start providing data to Eric's team, is we give you a bunch of data, but there's nobody to interpret that for you. And more important, there's nobody out there to say, well, this is how it ties to you, right? You guys have, agencies usually have an extremely deep level of context of what the customers want. And this is something that we recognize and we respect, and now we actually really want leverage from a sense of a partnership and to be able to do that. So it's easy for us to generate 100-page reports. Most of you guys have seen that. You can do a simple download. There's all kinds of charts and data from your AdWords or Google Ads accounts. But the point here is, how do we find the right data, and how do we actually work with Joe's team to understand this is where Eric or Sherrie is coming about. So let's kind of start filtering down to the very key messages that resonate with you and drive certain action. So that's the important part where we see data, and it's actually used more and more, interpreted more and more by our partners.
I think the pivot there too is what it allows us to do for our clients is, I think sometimes if we focus on the transactional, it feels like we're selling to you, right? Because we're coming to you asking for more money for a thing. But if we focus on the data and the objective, it's not about sale, it's about value to you, right? And I think that is the pivot for us. The pivot for us is to focus on what I call the consultative aspect of the business, whether that being the quarterly business review with an existing client or the growth assessment with a new client, is starting with understanding the broad opportunity, understanding the data and the insights around that, and then bringing you solutions, because it doesn't feel in that scenario where it's transactional sales driven, it's solution driven. Obviously, Eric, we've been a partner for a really long time. One thing I'd be curious about from your perspective is, any experience you have and kind of how it's evolved, but quite frankly, how you would like to see it continue to evolve in that way.
Yeah, I think it has been a while. Early on, I would say there was some conflict, especially when we're looking at more display atmosphere with GDN versus in-house tools with Hearst Network and whatnot. Well, what network should we go with? Well, that was brought to our attention by both directions. I think today it is more about, hey, you can test with GDN, go work with it, and then when you figure out where things need to be, and we'll help you interpret it and work with you, we can escalate and get more volume through the Hearst Network. And it really works from a data-driven perspective, because then we can focus on that long-term rather than just, hey, we're going to go all in on one area and isolate to that one focus group. And I think one of the things that we want to do is keep the communication going, because whether it be quarterly reviews or just week-to-week conversations, if our strategy, which Sears is rather turmoil times, if it changes, which is happening quite often, and one is going one direction, the other one's suggesting things in another direction, we can't run, and we're going to hit some walls. So we really have to stay on top of each other.
Yeah, and then to that point, I think obviously for an entrepreneur startup, it's the same thing as you can't commit to an annual plan, right? You've got to go to market and test and learn and scale on that. Can you talk about a little bit about your expectation? You guys are getting ready to launch this summer, and how you think about that in terms of go to market.
Well, like I was saying earlier, we're not going to do bricks and mortar. About a year and a half ago, I had segments on QVC. And as I sat this morning and I watched Micmac from the first conversation, it really dawned on me, and she really impressed upon the importance of getting that data from that first level user, right? And when I was on QVC and while I was selling $10,000 a minute, QVC or the shopping channel in Toronto would never allow us to have that data on who was buying our product. And that was such valuable information. Well, now when we step into a relationship with Google, a partnership, as well as with Joe and iCrossing, we'll be given that data. And that's incredibly important to have.
No, I appreciate that, because it allows you to learn as you look to scale your business.
Exactly.
With that, because I think we have about 5 minutes, I want to give time for Q&A.
It's kind of a cheeky question. So I was hoping maybe we could be some trial starters for your product.
I was just going to ask, do I
carries
have
it
any
with her,
takers?
so-
Yeah. I'll
Provide
try.
me
You
your
can even take my
information and I'll be
picture.
happy to send you samples. But the criteria is you have to take your before picture and after picture.
Totally.
So. Love it.
Any other questions for this group? Yep.
Just a quick question for Google. Why did you choose iCrossing as a partner for part of this this opportunity?
Well, I think it's mutual, right? So I think, I don't know in the cheesy way, I think we chose each other. It's awkward to talk about choosing to start getting to, sounds like a dating scene. Well, so what it is again, we're looking for agents that are willing to think differently. Well, first we have to think differently, right? And it's not easy for a large organization. I've been with Google for about 6 years now, and we went through several changes internally. Every one of them is I describe them as painful, but you sort of kind of grow out of the mistakes. And I think we kind of have to come to the realization is that, like I mentioned earlier, channel execution going forward will become less profitable for any business if you're media services, right? Automation has gone to a certain degree where you are armed with the infinite data, you're armed with the infinite selections and choices, and you're ever more sophisticated in terms of using and understanding these products and data. So we have to think a little bit more on the longer trajectory of growth. The whole theme of today is about growing, right? So I think we need to think about who are more invested in the longer term, and this is one of the selection and criteria we have is understanding the potentials of these partnerships. And two is, obviously we can get onto better details about, efficiencies and other metrics where we can see from historical performances where their agency is actually doing better in terms of certain key product innovation and adoption versus the other. And so I think both from a kind of a scientific perspective as well as a strategic perspective, I think we think an agency like iCrossing is a perfect partner for us. But I want to make sure that we drive the point home. This is not a very scaled or automatic process where there's no face in front of the relationship. I think what actually really drove the point home is actually having these, sometimes it could be challenging, right? In discussions, and the first meeting between Joe and I, or in his office, we actually have a lot of debates about objectives and how the direction we can go. So I think having the willingness to kind of have a partner sit down and listen is very important. And also, I'll just comment that you can see the way we're sitting. Usually, the Google wouldn't be on the stage, right? Like in the past, I know you guys went to an agency summits. We will be back in the back somewhere because we'll say, "Hey, Joe, how did it go?" Oh, okay, good, because you don't want us to see the clients. Sometimes we can't see the clients, right? Or sometimes we'll be sitting next to Joe, right? We'll be basically agents in the middle, and then here's your vendors, and here's your customers. So I think this is symbolic in a way where the agency who actually put the customers in front, and Google by no means needs to be in the front, and we're very clear on that. So we're very happy whenever agency actually put the client's interest in the center, in the middle, and then we have a common thread we can build on. And I think that's where we can find, we found each other, and this is how we actually think about partnership going forward.
That was really eloquent. That was great. Yeah. I do want to build on it because I think it's a great question, and obviously we see the benefit of Google. But there is this aspect of the relationship which is around trust. And one thing that Tong and I talked about early on is, it's actually part of the reason I came to iCrossing 3.5 years ago. Is I was at another agency, and we deliberately kept our partners like Google and Facebook at arm's length because we were nervous that they would take our clients, right? And maybe there was some cause for that, I don't know. But we created that dynamic, and what we found is it sent a signal that we didn't trust them. And our clients aren't dumb. They also felt that, right? And it created this dynamic, almost self-fulfilling. Because then the partners felt like, well, I have to go around the agency because the agency isn't bringing me in. And then they would. And then it reinforced why we try to keep the partners at arm's length. And it was a key reason of coming to iCrossing is our culture has to be one of collaboration. It has to be one of inclusion if we're going to meet these objectives. And because again, to the beginning, we can't reach that growth alone. We have to do it in partnership. And what I have to say is, I think Google's always been a good partner, but the commitment that we've seen from them, the amount of time they spend with us, not trying to sell the next thing, but having conversations around our clients' business, and quite frankly, our business, has been refreshing and appreciated, and that's why we're here today. I just want to say thank you to the panelists and for the time, and if anybody has any other questions, we'd be happy to talk afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, panel.